All right, today we're diving into something, well, kind of dark. We're talking about the deliberate, calculated act of ruining someone's life with nothing more than words and schemes. We're going to find out where the law draws the line between a simple lie, a vicious smear, and a full-blown criminal act. So let's get right into it. You know, this quote, it just nails it, doesn't it? It perfectly captures the terrifying speed and the raw, destructive power of a lie. By the time the truth is just starting to gather its facts and get ready, a falsehood has already infected countless minds and, in some cases, shattered a reputation beyond repair. And it's exactly because of that danger that our legal system has forged shields to defend us. And that is absolutely the best way to think about this. This isn't going to be some dusty, boring legal lecture. Think of it more like an armory tour. We're about to examine two fundamental shields, both designed to protect two of the most precious things you have, your freedom and your identity. So, here's our game plan for today. We're going to start with the dark art of deception just to get our key concepts down. Then we'll do a deep dive into two very specific social weapons, the frame-up and the smear. And finally, we'll wrap it all up by opening Deception's playbook to see how they stack up side by side. All right, section one. The best way to really get your head around these incriminatory machinations is to think of them as social weapons, right? They don't use bullets, they don't use blades, but their impact can be just as devastating, targeting a person's standing in society, their career, their reputation, and even their liberty. Now, these social weapons, they basically fall into two distinct categories. First, you have what we'll call the poisoned arrow. This is a direct, precise, targeted attack aimed squarely at someone's freedom, usually by accusing them of a specific crime. And then there's the poisoned well. This is way more insidious. It's not a single shot. It's an attack that contaminates the entire environment around a person, poisoning how everyone sees them and attacking their very identity. But before we can properly analyze these weapons, we need the right tools. See, in the legal world, you can't just look at the damage that was done. You have to understand exactly how the weapon was built and fired. And this requires what I like to call the legal analyst's toolkit, which has two absolutely fundamental concepts at its core. So let me just throw this out there for you. If you see someone do something that's clearly deceptive, let's say they plant a wallet in someone else's bag, is that act by itself a crime? The answer, maybe surprisingly, is no. And to understand why, we need to grab our first tool from the toolkit. That first tool is a concept called actus reus. Now, it's a Latin term, sounds kind of fancy, but it just means the guilty act. This is the physical part of the crime. It's the component you can see, you can record, you can point to. It's the action, the conduct, the tangible thing that someone actually did. Let's just call it the smoking gun. It's that undeniable evidence that an action took place. It's the physical planting of the stolen goods. It's the observable act of hitting post on a false rumor online. It's the clear, visible part of the equation. But here's the thing. A smoking gun by itself doesn't tell you who pulled the trigger, or, more importantly, why they pulled it. And that brings us to the second, and you could argue the more important tool in our kit, mens rea. This one means the guilty mind. This isn't about what a person did, it's all about what they were thinking. It's about their mental state, their intention, their knowledge that what they were doing was wrong. And our metaphor for this one is the malicious blueprint. See, a crime isn't just an accident. It requires a plan, an intention, a blueprint to cause harm. So here's the bottom line, the most crucial point. For any act to be a crime, you need both. You absolutely must have the smoking gun, the guilty act, and you must have the malicious blueprint, the guilty mind. You need proof of the action, and you need proof of the intent behind it. Okay, so now that we have our tools, let's put them to work. In Section 2, we're going to dissect our first weapon, the frame-up. This falls under Article 363 of the law, and it is the perfect example of our poisoned arrow, a direct, targeted shot that's meant to take away someone's freedom. And we're going to break this down systematically, step by step. We'll look at the law's purpose, the specific act, our smoking gun, the required mindset, the malicious blueprint, then the harm it causes, and finally, the consequences for the person who did it. So first up, why does this law even exist? What's the point? Well, think of Article 363 as a legal bodyguard. Its entire job is to stand between you and a wrongful accusation. It's there to safeguard your liberty from being stripped away by some baseless claim, and it's there to shield you from the stigma of being labeled a criminal when you haven't done a single thing wrong. Now let's talk about the act itself. The actus reus. For this crime, it's the act of directly incriminating or falsely accusing an innocent person of a crime. And here is a super critical distinction. This is not perjury. Perjury is when you lie under oath in a court of law. This crime covers all the false accusations that happen outside of a formal judicial proceeding.
Okay, that's the legal definition, but what does this act actually look like when it happens out there in the real world?
For instance, it could be planting company property in a rival colleague's desk and then conveniently discovering it. Or it could be making an anonymous call to the police, falsely claiming your neighbor is involved in something illegal. And in today's world, it could absolutely be creating a fake online profile to publicly accuse an ex-partner of assault. You see the pattern here? They're all direct accusations of a crime, and they're all happening outside of a courtroom.
Now for the all-important mindset, the malicious blueprint. This is what separates a crime from just a simple mistake. The person doing the accusing must know that the person they are pointing the finger at is innocent. It has to be a deliberate, calculated act of framing someone. There's no oops, my bad defense here. The malicious intent is the very core of the offense.
Let's just compare them side by side. It makes it super clear. On the left, we've got the malicious blueprint. You know for a fact your roommate is innocent, but you lie to the landlord and say they stole the rent money just to get them evicted. That is a crime. On the right, an honest mistake. You genuinely thought you saw your neighbor's car hit yours, but it turns out you were wrong. It was a similar-looking car. That's not a crime, that's just an error.
And the harm caused by this poisoned arrow, it's absolutely devastating. Your reputation gets dragged through the mud. Your freedom is directly threatened. You could be arrested, you're facing an investigation, you're forced to spend money on lawyers you never thought you'd need, and the damage to your peace of mind is just immense. The anxiety, the stress, the constant worry, it's a nightmare.
Now, not all frame-ups are treated the same way by the law. An aggravating circumstance makes the crime worse. For example, framing a rival to get them fired right before a big promotion. A mitigating circumstance, on the other hand, can lessen the blame. If someone forced you, say, under threat, to make that false accusation, that coercion could be considered by the court. So after all that, the act, the intent, the harm, what's the ultimate consequence for doing this? It all comes down to this number, 30. The penalty is what's known as arresto minor, which is a jail term that ranges from 1 day up to a maximum of 30 days. Now, it might not sound like a long time, but it's a direct consequence for attempting to strip an innocent person of their freedom. Okay, let's shift gears and move on to our second weapon, the smear. This is covered by Article 364, and this is our poisoned well. This isn't a direct shot. It's more like a slow-acting poison designed to contaminate everything around the victim, destroying their reputation, their honor, their good name. And we're going to break this one down using that exact same 5-step analysis, which will really help highlight the differences between the two. So, the purpose of this law. If the last one was a bodyguard for your freedom, think of this one as a shield for your identity. Its whole job is to protect your honor and your good name. It's specifically designed to catch those malicious schemes that might not fit the strict old definitions of libel or slander, but are absolutely intended to ruin someone's public standing. Now notice the huge difference in the act itself, the actus reus. We're not talking about a direct accusation anymore. The guilty act here is engaging in any form of intrigue or scheme. This is so much broader, so much more subtle. It's about weaving a complex web, not firing a single bullet. So what could this intrigue look like? Well, it could be a whispering campaign at the office where you strategically plant small seeds of doubt about a colleague's competence. It could be spreading rumors in your local community group that someone is a neglectful parent. Or, in a very modern sense, it could be creating an anonymous blog dedicated entirely to discrediting a local business owner. The actions are indirect, but the goal is crystal clear. Poison the well. And the mindset here, the malicious blueprint, is absolutely crucial. The law states the principal purpose, the main goal of the entire scheme must be to harm the victim's honor. Malice isn't just a component here. It is the engine driving the entire thing. This isn't about idle gossip or a joke that goes too far. It has to be a deliberate, focused effort to tear someone down. This is a great way to picture it. Imagine all the possible motives for starting a rumor as slices of a pie. For it to be a crime under this article, the biggest piece of that pie, the primary motivation, has to be that malicious intent to harm someone's reputation. If that's not the main goal, then it's not this crime. And the harm from a poisoned well is deep and pervasive. It's an attack on your dignity, your sense of self-worth. It has real social consequences when friends and colleagues start to pull away. This can easily lead to professional consequences, like being passed over for a promotion. And the emotional toll is just massive, often leading to depression and social anxiety. And again, circumstances matter. An aggravating factor would be taking that scheme public in a way that causes widespread damage, like a viral social media campaign. A mitigating factor, on the other hand, could be that you were acting on false information yourself. If you repeated a damaging rumor that you genuinely believed was true, you lacked that core malicious intent, which could lessen your culpability.
So what's the consequence for poisoning the well? The penalty is either arresto menor, that same 1 to 30 days in jail we saw before, or a fine of up to 20,000 pesos. This gives the courts flexibility to match the punishment to the specific harm that was caused.
All right, for our final section, let's bring it all together. We've examined both of these weapons in pretty good detail. Now it's time to open up Deception's playbook and put them right next to each other. So we have our direct, piercing attack of the poisoned arrow, and then we have the pervasive, corrupting influence of the poisoned well. Placing them next to each other is where the real clarity comes from. This table really just distills everything down to its essence. Let's walk through it. The target of a frame-up is a person's freedom. For a smear, it's their honor. The method of a frame-up is a direct accusation of a crime. For a smear, it's a subtle intrigue. And this difference in method leads directly to the harm. One threatens you with legal consequences, while the other causes social isolation. And look, if you take away only one thing from this entire explainer, let it be this. Article 363, the frame-up, is a sniper rifle. It is precise, it is targeted, and it is designed for one specific, devastating result. Article 364, the smear, is a fog. It rolls in slowly, it's pervasive, it gets everywhere, and it just chokes everything around the person, obscuring who they really are. And that really brings us to our final thought. You have to remember, these laws were written long before the internet, long before social media. So the question for all of us today is this. In an age of anonymous accounts, viral rumors, and so-called cancel culture, where a lie can literally circle the globe in seconds, how do we wield these old shields effectively to protect our freedom and our honor? That is something worth thinking about.